Merry Christmas everyone, and welcome to another one of my favourites / non-favourites of the year. My name is Mr. Francy and welcome to Mr. Francy Reads. If you are returning, welcome back. If you're here for the first time, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell ding for all those notifications. Today we are doing my second non-favourite video in a row, and this one might see me get even more emotional than the last one. Today I am talking about the single worst books that I read in 2021. In 3, 2, 1, go. Is there any better way to start off a worst books list than to talk about a book that I actually put up as a buddy read on my Discord? Yay! Because Mr. Francy decided this is going to be a great book. Guess what, you guys? Everyone seemed to love this book except for Mr. Francy. But that's okay. Mr. Francy's going to give you his opinion. Coming in at number 9 and receiving 2 stars was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is an adult classic book and it just did not work for me. Now, I could have DNF'd this book many times, but let me tell you why I did not DNF this book. I read this book after reading The Foxhole Court and The Little French Bridal Shop. Both of those books I had already DNF'd. If I DNF'd this one too, it would have been 3 in a row. And to this day, Mr. Francy has not ever DNF'd 3 books in a row. So I forced myself to get through this one, resulting in 2 stars for Mary Shelley. The reason why this book received such a low rating, but also why it's 9th rather than the top 1 or 2, is a mood reading reason. We're following 2 people predominantly in this book. A doctor named Frankenstein and a monster, he's called a monster in the book, also called Frankenstein. When we follow the monster starts off with a very neutral mood. As the book goes along, the monster's mood goes down, 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 down. So it got 2 stars from me. What can I say? It wasn't for me. Coming in at number 8 is a book that I actually DNF'd earlier on in the year, but then I decided, you know what? It deserves a second chance. So that's why it did not appear on my DNF'd, all the books I DNF'd video, because I actually did finish it in the end. But I originally DNF'd it because I just wasn't in the mood at the time, so I thought that wasn't fair enough of me. Let's give it a go, and it ended up getting 2 stars anyway, and that book was The Tower of Fools by Andrzej Sapkowski. This book does something. It has the trope that is my least favourite trope in the whole wide world. And that trope is the travelling / questing trope where you don't know where you're going and you don't know how you're going to get there. So it's going to take forever to get there because you just don't know where you're going and you don't know how you're going to get there. But seriously, it took forever for us to get where we were going because the characters in this book didn't know where they were going and they didn't know how they were going to get there, and that just did not work for Mr. Francy. No! Coming in at number 7 is a book that incredibly disappointed me, and that's why it had to be on this list. And that was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. Interesting fact about Stephanie Garber, her only other book that I read this year was this book, Caraval, and this book was my favourite fantasy of the year. Yes, you heard me right, my favourite fantasy of the year. This book was one of the worst books I've ever read. This book is book 1. This book is book 2. How does this happen? Let me explain it to you. In book 1 of this series, which is called Caraval, we are introduced to a magical, fantastical type of carnival that is playing a game that is really kind of like The Amazing Race, but a fantasy version of that. So you're given a clue, that clue leads you to somewhere, that'll get you another clue, and so on and so forth. But it is a game that you have to get through quickly, because if you don't, there will be disastrous results. There's an actual consequence that is going to take place that will truly affect our main character. I was on the edge of my seat all the way through. So, when I finished Caraval on express delivery order, I put Legendary, because I was like, I need to read me more of this and I need it right now, because that book was so good. And this book, Stephanie Garber, What did you do? What happened? Seriously. So, Stephanie Garber fell, unfortunately, to the Suzanne Collins curse. If you're new here, the Suzanne Collins curse is a term that I have termed here on my channel to mean if you've caught lightning in a bottle in a book, then for another book in that series, you smash that lightning you've caught in the bottle on the floor and you throw the shards away in the trash can and write something else that was absolute... I won't say the word. But it was. Book number 1, Caravel, is a plot-driven book. Book number 2, Legendary, is a character-driven book. Book number 1, Caravel, is an amazing game that took me round the twist and back again and had me on the edge of my seat. Book number 2, Legendary, has the game in it, but the game is there for like 10% of the book, and the other 90% is a romance, despite the fact that this book is called a fantasy. Help me out here. Seriously, help me out here. How is a YA fantasy a book that is 90% romance? Coming in at number 5 was a straight romance book. So in case you don't know, last year I read 1 straight romance book. So I had the goal this year in 2021 to make sure I read at least 6, and I achieved that. This one was one of them, and... it disappointed me. And that book is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. You guys, do you want to know the most disappointing thing about this book? The most disappointing thing about this book is that up until the end of the third last chapter of this book, I was going to give it a solid 3.5 or 4 stars. Then Christina Lauren decided to do something so completely unforgivable that my reaction was, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to take away 2 stars and give you 2 stars just on that because you deserve it. Let me explain what happened in a spoiler-free way. Considering I'm going to talk to you about the second last chapter, I'm going to try and keep it as spoiler-free as I can. But if you don't want to know anything about this book, then just skip ahead till you see the next book, okay? We are heading towards the ultimate climax of the book. We get to the venue that we need to go in order to get to that final climax, and the third last chapter ends with us getting to that venue where the final climax is going to take place. We then get on to the last chapter. So we literally end that third last chapter with we had arrived at the place we need to go. Then we get on to the second last chapter, which opens up with, it is now 6 years later and here's what happened. Wait, what? Wait, seriously, what? So you've built me up all this time for this major moment that is going to occur in this book. We get there, and then you're not going to give me that moment? Just to repeat, you're not going to give me that moment that you've led me to for the entirety of the book. You're not going to give it to me. And so in the second last chapter, again, spoiler free, what basically happens is that the character says, it's been 6 years and this is what's happened. And so we work out, as far as, looking at how things are now 6 years later, what has happened. We are able to deduce what has happened, but we didn't get to see that thing play out. Why would you do this? I wrote this in my Goodreads review for this book, and I'm so glad that I did because I agree with it still to this day, which is, yes, it's a way to make your readers emotional, but it is a cheap way to make your readers emotional. And now it's time to get into my top 4. This next book just missed out on receiving a medal. But don't worry, the top 3 are right around the corner, and also don't worry, I'm going to get emotional about this book too. Coming in at number 4, receiving 2 stars, was The Gilded Ones by Namina Fauna. If this is a book that you plan on reading sometime soon, skip forward to the next book. Okay, you guys, I had issues with this book, but my main issues with the book was not the plot, oh no, but the writing style. I physically read this book, and I struggled to physically read it. Not because Namina Fauna, who is the author of this book, made this book hard to read because she used a language that was hard to understand. No, 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 no. It was because of writing style choices that she made that did not make sense to me. You guys, I have a list. So let me tell you what my list is. Alright. First of all, let's quickly talk about the genre. This is marketed as a fantasy, and I completely disagree. While there are fantasy elements in it, I would say the dominating genre is actually dystopian. So I don't get it. If you're going to have a book that's 10% fantasy, to me that 10% fantasy does not make it a fantasy. That's just my own personal opinion. But now let's talk about writing style choices. The word sniffed. If I say the word sniffed to you, define the word sniffed. What would you say is your definition for the word sniffed? My definition for the word sniffed means that you have just smelt something. Like a flower. You go outside, you see a flower, you want to smell it, so you sniff to smell the flower, and then you say, I sniffed the flower. Am I wrong? Am I missing something here? Did this definition get changed? According to Namina Fauna, apparently I'm absolutely wrong. Because, okay, I think Namina Fauna was going for the word haughty, but instead she wanted to use the word sniffed. Let me explain. So, for example, she might write a quote that someone says, and in that quote she would be saying the person is saying, blah, 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 sniffed character A. So they're not smelling something, they're saying it. Blah, 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 sniffed character A. And if that's not enough, let's try this. Here is a quote for you, not from the book, I'm making this up to make my point. And the quote is, "You don't belong here," said character A. "Excuse me?" sniffed character B. Sniffed. 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 You guys, this didn't happen once or twice. It happened like every second page. My next issue with the writing style was skipping over integral scenes. Let me give you an example that's outside of the book to explain what I mean by this. Let's just say that we have a male character that wants to come out of the closet to his best friend. So he's walking to his best friend's house, and on the way, he's, feeling all these sorts of dread, and he's walking towards his friend's house with a lot of trepidation. He finally gets to the door and he sticks out his hand, he knocks on the door, suddenly having no idea what to say. End of chapter, beginning of the next chapter. It was 9 o'clock and I returned home after having that conversation. Turned out that Aiden was totally fine. And are you serious? So we're completely skipping the scene. Why? In a fantasy, in a thriller or a mystery, I'm totally fine with this. In fact, I welcome it in a thriller or a mystery, because if it's going to give away who the killer is, then I get it. But in a fantasy, fantasy, dystopian, no, it makes no sense. Oh, but you guys, are you ready? Are you ready? It is time for the top, or well, depending on where you're coming from, the bottom, 3. The award for the bronze, the silver, and the gold medals. Mr. Francy is going to get quite emotional here. Before I show you the book that received the bronze medal, some of you have told me you plan on reading this book too, so I'm so sorry to be the bearer of bad news. When you see this book, if you haven't read it, then feel free to skip along to the next one, and that's absolutely fine. And again, I feel awful doing this when I actively am aware that some of you are about to read this book at some point soon. But it's my worst books of the year, so I kind of need to do it because it got 2 stars. But anyway, so I'll do this and you decide if you're going to read it soon, if you want to keep watching this section, or if you want to skip over to the next book. Coming in and 3rd place and receiving the bronze medal, I am so happy to give it to them because they certainly deserve it, is Christina Lauren. Inner Holidays! We spoke about Christina Lauren earlier with Josh and Hazel's Guide to Dating. If I was on a stranded island and I could only read that one or this one, I would read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Dating any day of the week. This was so much worse. We follow a character, our protagonist, who we learn a lot about as we go along. But the side characters we know next to nothing about, which for me made them uninvestable. My next complaint is regarding the Groundhog Day trope that is in this book. For anyone who has picked up this book, I'm sure you've heard the premise or the tagline, "It's like Groundhog Day." I did, that's why I picked it up. Yes, technically that is true. The day does repeat. But in my mind, the day did not repeat enough. If you're going to say it is Groundhog Day, if you've seen the Groundhog Day film, that day repeats many, 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 many times. The day in this book doesn't repeat anywhere near enough, and that really let me down. The next thing that really upset me about this book was the fact that she breaks the cycle. But the way the cycle is broken is way too simple. I don't only think I have that opinion, I also think that Christina Lauren's publishers had that opinion, because the second last chapter of the book is all exposition, explaining in as much detail as possible how our protagonist broke the cycle. So I don't just think it was me. I feel like the publishers went back to Christina and Lauren and said, look, before we release this, before we publish it, you need to write a chapter explaining it because it's too simple. Seriously, you need to write more than just that. And it just annoyed me. And there was a plot convenience that came up that also annoyed me. And there's a relationship in this book because it's an adult romance. And the romance just seems so completely unrealistic to me. Can you see why I had issues? I was hoping it would get better. That's why I kept reading. And it just didn't. Oh, but if you thought that was bad, just wait. Coming in at number 2 is a book that's going to receive a silver medal from me because I don't know what the publishers were thinking when they decided to give the genre of this book. And if you thought my thoughts on the Gilded Ones was bad when I said that it should be a dystopian rather than a fantasy, the genre of this book makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to me. I'm still months later trying to work out why it was marketed as the genre it was marketed as. Coming in at number 2 is an auto not by author for me, Peter Swanson, with Every Vow You Break. This book is marketed as an adult thriller. I don't get it. I'm still 6 months, I think it's been since I read this book. 6 months later, I'm still racking my brain going, how is this a thriller? It's not a thriller. There is nothing about this book that is thrilling at all. If you want to call it a mystery, you can, but I wouldn't even say it's a mystery. For me personally, it's a contemporary. So I don't get how it's a thriller. And let me explain. We have one moment, like the last paragraph of one chapter, where it looks like things are gonna go down. And the way that chapter ends like things are gonna go down. We have the victims, they have been cornered. I'm not being specific here, I'm just gonna keep it general. They've been cornered, and the end of the chapter is basically has our protagonist going, we had no idea what we were going to do, there was no way out. And my reaction was, finally, hallelujah, we are getting a thriller. The next chapter opens up with the villain saying, ha 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 ha, we were totally kidding. Of course we're not going to do anything horrible to you. Let them go. This is not a thriller. It's not a thriller. It's not a mystery. I have bad words that you can't say on BookTube, but I won't. I'm just gonna say, it's not a thriller. It's not a mystery. As you can tell, I'm trying to contain myself here. It's not a mystery. It's not a thriller. My mindset was the mindset of a thriller. It was not. Okay. Mr. Francy is going back to 0. For about 2 seconds, because I'm about to flare up big time. So just be ready. Because if you thought that 3rd and 2nd place and my reaction to those 2 was bad, hold on to your hats. It's about to get dark in here. The book that comes in at number 1 is a book that I've only shown on camera twice before. This is only the 3rd time I'm showing it to you. This will be the last time I show it to you. I said that last time, but this book is the worst book I've read, so it needs to be in this video. It is only going to appear on your screen for 2 seconds as I read the title and the author, and then I'm going to fling the book away because I do not believe it deserves any more advertising than that. So be ready. We're going to do this incredibly quickly. Here we go. Coming in at number 1 and winning the golden medal for the absolute by a mile worst book I read in 2021 was We Are Totally Normal by Naomi Kanakia. We are never, ever, 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 ever gonna see that book on my channel ever again, and I will tell you why. I'll open up by telling you very clearly and succinctly why. I have never in my life read such an offensive book. That book is an LGBTIQ plus male romance. Yeah, right. But that's what they say it is anyway. No, it is not. It is so many words under the sun that I will not use because I don't want to put out that negative energy. But I do want to say that as a member of said LGBTIQ plus community, I walked away after finishing this book feeling personally offended by the book. And I also felt personally offended on behalf of the LGBTIQ plus community. To cut a long story short, we're following a man by the name of Nundan, who is a straight guy. In this world of that book, apparently it is in to be gay. So Nundan, wanting to climb the social ladder at his high school, decides he's going to pretend to be gay. So he asks out a guy that he fully, wholly, and completely knows is 100% into him. Nundan, and Nundan says this many times in the book, finds this guy completely and utterly repulsive. And yet, he decides to have a relationship with him to climb the social ladder at school. He does not love this guy at all. He is literally stringing him along. Now, if that's not bad enough, there is a second reason why Nundan is setting up this fake relationship that he has with a guy that absolutely disgusts him, and he keeps telling us that many times throughout the book, that this guy disgusts me. I don't know why I'm with him. If not for reason number 2 that we're about to get into, I would not be with this guy. He is just terrible. Da 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 da. Reason number 2, please clear the kids out of the room. 3, 2, 1. Reason number 2 why he wants to date this guy that he finds so completely and utterly repulsive is because then his friends that are the girls will trust him more, and he will be able to, even quicker than a straight guy, get into their pants. Oh, isn't that so charming? Oh, absolutely. Yes, you're going to become gay, date a guy, so that the girls can trust you and you can take advantage of them. And if that is not enough, I will spoil this last part because I absolutely do not recommend you read this book. Nundan doesn't even learn his lesson by the end of the book. He walks away with his head held high, not regretting anything. Then I did some research afterwards and found out that the author, Naomi Kanakia, put up a tweet on her Twitter account saying something around the following lines. I'm basically surmising what she said here, which is, I hope that everyone who's like Nundan can see themselves in this book and appreciate that their way of life is valued. Are you kidding me? If the work of fiction was not enough, the author then goes further to say, I not only endorse this idea, but if you see yourself, I hope it helps you to achieve this. Are you serious? Can you see why I'm getting so angry about this? No. Please, please, please don't buy this book. I mean, you guys are obviously going to do what you want, but please don't support this author. This is so offensive. And then there are people out there that are saying, oh, we should be nice to Naomi Kanakia because she is a POC transgender person. POC, in case you don't know, stands for person of color. I'm sorry, but to me, I don't see colour. That's just the way that it is. I've grown up with so many different types of friends and people that I hang around with that a human is a human to me. That's just how it is with me. So I don't see that. But I'm not going to forgive you whether you are POC or not, or whether you're transgender or not. If you're transgender, you're part of the community. You are literally offending your own community. It makes it worse that you are transgender. How very dare you Naomi Kanakia. Is it any wonder that that is the single worst book that I've read in 2021? Back to smiling, Mr. Francy, because that book is now done. I don't have to talk about it anymore, so I'm happy. But you got my unfiltered opinions there. I hope I didn't offend anyone with what I said, but the truth had to be told. But that is it. The next video you're going to see from me is going to be such a fun video. You ready for this? You ready? You've been asking for it all year. I am finally. The next video will be my bookshelf tour. Yee! Oh, it takes a long time to do, but it's always so much fun to watch back when it's done. So if you don't want to miss my bookshelf tour, then hit that subscribe button and hit the bell ding to get all those notifications so that you will be there to see the bookshelf tour coming up very, very, very soon. I'm so excited. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it. Letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah! Thank you so much for watching, and of course, happy reading!